When 24-year-old Ethan Carver walked across the stage at the police academy graduation, his parents, an older couple who had adopted him late in his teens, clapped proudly in the stands. For them, it was proof that their quiet, reserved boy had finally found his calling. Ethan wasn't the loudest cadet, nor the most charismatic, but instructors praised his discipline. He never missed a drill, never raised his voice, and carried himself with the kind of restraint that departments wanted in new officers. To colleagues, Ethan was a blank slate, unremarkable in the best possible way. No scandals, no questionable friends, no bad habits. He didn't drink, didn't gamble, didn't even have much of a social media presence. In an age when recruits often came with digital baggage, Ethan was refreshingly clean. Almost too clean. The first sign of something amiss came during a routine patrol call. Ethan and his partner, Officer Ramirez, responded to a domestic disturbance in a crumbling neighborhood. Ironically, just a few streets from where Ethan had spent his early childhood. Ramirez later recalled how Ethan froze as they pulled up, his eyes locking on a row of abandoned houses. When a witness casually mentioned, "The Carver family used to stay around here," rough crowd they were, Ethan's entire demeanor changed. His jaw tightened, his answers clipped. Ramirez shrugged it off, assuming his partner just didn't like being back in a bad neighborhood. But that night, Ethan went home early, skipped roll call the next morning, and returned with an excuse about being under the weather. 2 weeks later, the precinct received a strange call. A woman refused to give her name but insisted one of the new recruits resembled a boy she remembered from years ago. Her words were chilling. "He's not who you think he is. That boy hurt people before. I don't know how, but he'll hurt people again." At first, investigators dismissed it. Anonymous tips often came from disgruntled acquaintances or unstable individuals, but protocol required at least a cursory check. The problem was, there wasn't much to check. Ethan's background file was slim. A foster care history, a name change at 18, and clean employment references. Nothing remotely violent. And yet, something about the caller's conviction bothered Detective Laura Hayes, the internal affairs officer assigned the case. Hayes began combing through Ethan's early life. His adoption papers revealed his name had once been Ethan Mercer, changed when his foster parents finalized guardianship. When she traced those records, she found gaps, years where school transcripts were missing, juvenile records sealed, and even family history scrubbed. The deeper she looked, the stranger it became. A juvenile court case, classified and buried, surfaced under his old name. It referenced a fire at a group shelter when Ethan was 15. Officially, the fire was ruled undetermined, though rumors circulated that it had been deliberately set. 2 teenagers died in the blaze. Witness statements described a boy, quiet, distant, prone to sudden bursts of aggression. Some said he was seen sneaking out before the fire spread, but nothing was ever proven. The shelter closed, the file sealed, and the boy disappeared into foster care. That boy was Ethan. When investigators reopened the case, the surviving victims were located. One, a woman named Chloe, remembered him vividly. He was strange, always watching us. Sometimes he'd whisper about starting over, burning things down to make them clean. We told the staff, but they thought he was just acting out. Then the fire happened. Her testimony rattled Hayes. But more damning was a diary fragment recovered from the ruins years ago, half-burned, but legible in parts. It spoke of anger, of making them pay, of fire as justice. Handwriting experts compared the scrawls with Ethan's academy paperwork. The similarities were unnerving. Detectives confronted Ethan in a quiet interrogation room. He sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes steady. He didn't deny being there. He admitted the shelter had been a dark time, that he had been bullied, isolated, treated like an outcast. But he insisted he never set the fire. "I escaped that life," he said evenly. "That boy died in the flames. I rebuilt myself. You can't hold me to who I used to be." There was no emotion in his words. Not anger, not fear, just a cold resolve, as if he had been rehearsing this confrontation his entire adult life. When the story leaked, the department faced public outrage. How could a man with a possible history of violence slip through their screening? Officers who once trusted him now looked at Ethan with suspicion, whispering about his eerie calmness, his ability to hide. Some sympathized. He had been a child. After all, others believed the mask was finally slipping, that they had been working alongside someone who was always dangerous. As prosecutors scrambled to decide whether they had enough to reopen the shelter fire as a homicide case, Hayes discovered something chilling. In Ethan's apartment, tucked inside a locked drawer, were charred matchbooks, old newspaper clippings of house fires, and sketches of burning buildings. It wasn't proof, not in a courtroom, but to those who had doubted, it felt like confirmation. When asked about them, Ethan simply smiled and said, "I almost made it. I almost outran who I was." To this day, whether Ethan truly set the shelter fire remains uncertain. Evidence was circumstantial, testimony fractured by time. But the legacy of his secret endures as a chilling reminder. Sometimes the people we trust most aren't the ones who never had a past, but the ones who buried it so well we forgot to look. Because Ethan Carver wasn't just a police recruit. He was a boy who had learned, long ago, how to hide in plain sight.